Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to what will probably be a new series on the channel, but somewhat different than normal. We're going to take a look at Hytale, which is really a highly anticipated game. From what I understand, it went into production about 9 years ago, or at the very least, that's when it was acquired by Riot. And the version that we're playing now was basically ready to release at that point in time, but for some reason Riot decided to try to make them switch their game engine out, and then it just went into development hell for a few years, and now it's here. So this is something meant to mainly appeal to the Minecraft crowd, and I am not 100% certain why or what it was about it that really sticks out to them other than the aesthetics. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of gameplay similarities. I never really did get into Minecraft all that much, so I thought this would be a fun way to try to spark the interest in me, because I do own it. I tried to get into it to do some videos for the channel, and I just couldn't quite get that spark that so many people seem to get. I have one of my closest friends is actually really hardcore fan of Minecraft, and to the point where some of the mods actually inspired him to learn how to code many years ago. So it's not like I've not been around people that actually love it. Just never did quite catch my attention. Hytale seemed appealing to me because it seems like there's somewhat more of a direction when you start out. I'm not very good at directionless games most of the time. I find I'm getting to where I enjoy them a little bit more as I get older. And yes, I did just turn off, I believe, drop items on death. I don't think I turned off fall damage, but I'll have to check later and see. I'm not a big fan of those types of things. I don't like death penalties. So I got rid of them. If you don't like that, oh well. Now, I've done a little bit of research into this just so I had some direction starting out, and the one big tip that I got continuously was when you first start out, find the temple, immediately run to it, and unlock a system in the game that will save you time backtracking later. So that is in fact the very first thing that we're going to do once everything loads in. So there's a few things to go over while you see me make the adventure to the temple here. Number one, I'm not really going to show me menuing a whole lot and going in tweaking settings, because I did quite a bit of that at first. Like, this is actually the second world I created because I booted one up before to test things out and see if there were any basic settings that I needed to change. And there's still a few that I needed to tweak here and there after loading into this. And you'll notice sometimes the diagnostic information, like what's on screen right now, will pop in and out. That's me just sort of taking a look to see how everything's performing. Number two, this game is still very early in development. So expecting it to run hyper smooth, or that there's not going to be a whole lot of changes between now and hell, even 4 or 5 months down the line, would be a ridiculous way to approach this. This is the earliest of early access, and realistically what I think they've done is it took a decent investment. Okay, let's back up a bit. From what I understand in terms of what has happened with this game, it was originally sold to Riot because they thought that with Riot's money and backing, they could actually make this into a significantly bigger thing than what it was originally planned to be. The interest was already there, but the funding sources and whatnot just kind of weren't that easy to get. And if you don't know who Riot is, Riot makes League of Legends, which would have been the biggest game relevant at the time that this acquisition would have happened, and Valorant is another giant one that Riot has. So they're a company with a lot of money. So it would make sense that they thought that taking this project under someone else's wing would be helpful. Turned out it just put it into development hell for 9 years. And from what I understand, the original dude that came up with this idea and this project basically had to come up with the funds to acquire it back, or the means to acquire it back, who knows. But he did eventually acquire it back, and now that he has it, what it seems like he's done, or at least I believe, if I'm understanding everything correctly, his strategy has been to sort of just throw everything out there as fast as possible to try and get people interested. So they got this build together, released it, and the way that they're handling updates, because they've already released one, and a second one I believe is not too far down the pipeline. from what it sounded like in an interview I read with him, the idea is get stuff sort of done and then pitch it out there to let people test it, with the idea being get as many of the systems they eventually want the game to have in place for people to test and try to figure out. And then they will iterate on them as they go. So this is early access. You're more or less paying to get in really early and do some beta testing to eventually help actually get the game refined whenever they decide to go to a 1.0 release. The only other game I've really played in super early access was Pal World. I picked it up pretty much the moment it was available. And anyone that actually played the original release versions of Pal World versus the way it is now can tell you it's a very different game. The aesthetics are basically the same, but the way the game plays is very different. It's a lot smoother and a lot more enjoyable of an experience now. Hytale, I would imagine the core is going to stay very similar, and just some of the iterations and the systems on top, as well as the smoothness of the way the game runs, will improve. Now, granted, if you've got a sufficiently powerful system, Hytale already runs really well. Like, it runs pretty well on my system, and my system's going on 11 or so years old, so I'm starting to get on the outer edge of what can adequately play a recent release game. Even something that is visually as simple as this, just the stuff going on under the roof, it can mess around with a few of the older components of my system. But overall, everything still works well. By the way, this is the temple. If you're unsure what to do, and it took me a moment to realize this myself, inside the altar there's a little spiral staircase that sort of wraps around. Here's a golem fellow. You just kind of get him to come back and attack you, then dodge on around him and go through that portal there. And it will unlock a system that probably should be something that you just sort of start right in front of for it to open up for you. Like, if I had to offer any sort of advice to the developers, it would probably be spawn you in at that spot back there, have you come up here, unlock this system, and then have some sort of NPC direct you back to that portal, then have you teleport into that temple and move the golem to the place where your character actually spawns in at. Because this system is something that if you played for a long time before you ever decided to look in that temple, would probably make you very angry to find after you've spent, I don't know, even something as small as 5 or 6 hours in this game if you just went out and started exploring around. Because every creature you come across unlocks a memory, and you can take those memories back to that altar, turn them in, and it unlocks some very basic necessities as far as establishing a base goes. Like, the reason why I'm running around here is I know that 10 is what you need to unlock the first item, and that gives you some of your eternal seeds that you can make, which those are, if you're actually farming with eternal ones, once you plant them, every time you harvest, you just give it enough time and it'll grow again. So this is the type of thing that shouldn't be obscure to get to. Now, granted, their plans could be that there's some stuff that would point you to this in the adventure mode that is unavailable right now. And in the long run, it will be way more obvious that you should do this. But I don't know. I just stepped back in there to get the golem spirit, by the way. So this is something that probably should be either the default starting spot, and then it directs you back into the world, or just something just to get this type of system. This is not the type of system that you want really hidden behind any sort of layers of obscurity. That being said, let's go into my experiences with Minecraft. So I've booted it up and tried a couple different times to actually get into it and really enjoy it, because it looks really appealing. I've seen some videos of people doing some really impressive things with it, and honestly, I've started getting to where I enjoy base building quite a bit more. So I would imagine I will actually enjoy Minecraft quite a bit if I can make myself actually stick with it. The thing is, when I boot it up, there's just no direction at all. And I don't really know what to do to get into it. This, at least, this memory system gave me a bit of a thing to latch onto as my beginning point. So that little bit of having something to do is enough to kind of keep my interest going. Also, the initial crafting system in this is a little bit better. Now, granted, it's extremely unfair to basically compare a game that started out as what would functionally be a mod to the other game that you're critiquing and critique the game that this was more or less a mod of in the original conception. So let's just be a little bit more generous here. More or less what I'm thinking of with Hytale is if I enjoy it, then there's no reason why I can't go back, get a little bit more familiar with Minecraft, and then start doing what apparently everyone else does, which is download the mods that actually will make it into the game that you want it to be, and then go from there. It's Roblox, but without the child predators. All right. Well, I mean, if you don't include the content creators that have all sort of been outed. Anyway, we're not going to go down that road too much. But this seems really fun. So my main goals to start were to get to this temple, get it going, and then find and establish a base using a prefabbed location. So what do I mean by prefab location? Whenever we get, let me just cut it and jump ahead a little bit. When you open up your world map, there'll be little spots that can kind of look like they might be ruins, like that little black spot right there. And those are places that are existing buildings. There's also spots that look like they might be little towns. The problem with me with going to something that looks like it might be a town is it also might be a place where there's mobs. So I wanted to find some sort of pre-constructed building to use as my initial base setup. So I set that marker at that location, and by the way, once you set a marker, you then also have to click on it and click select location to get it to pop up on your compass. But I set that up and decided to start traveling that direction and just see what it was like when I get there and whether or not that would make a decent base. So the sort of goals I've set for myself. I've unlocked the memory system. Now I want to build just some sort of structure that I can actually put storage and whatnot in and set up a respawn point so that if I die, that's where I'm going to pop back up at. Other than that, I would like to try to get as many workbenches put down as possible and try to get a basic set of armor before starting to really do a whole lot of exploring. Now, granted, it wouldn't be something that was inspired by or based on Minecraft if mining wasn't also an early goal. However, I want to get the base location first. I've got to punch some stuff, get a few things together, and then make some very basic equipment. So, plant fiber, the next thing I need, just run around and punch some plants. I haven't really noticed yet if it seems like there's anything in particular that you have to do, but chopping down a tree seems to drop enough stuff to actually build all your basic equipment. So, throw in a sword, then I'll grab myself a hatchet and a pickaxe, and we're basically set after clearing off my hotbars. I don't know if there's a setting yet or not to make it to where things don't just automatically drop in your hotbars. Not sure. Haven't played around that much. I do know that there's a few tweaks to some of the settings that I make to actually make this just a little bit more in line with what I like. Like, for example, I turn on enemy health bars. I just think it's a useful thing to see. If it's available, I don't see the reason not to use it. Like, if you've looked around the channel, you've probably noticed that I really love Monster Hunter. That's sort of the primary game that was the inspiration to actually start up with the channel. Now, that being said, while I can appreciate that Monster Hunter has gone for a long time without health bars, and I don't necessarily want them to add them because they've gotten a lot better at giving you visual cues as to the health of a monster overall other than just limping. The addition of damage numbers was quite nice because it gave you some indicator of where you were hitting. In this, I don't think damage numbers would do that job. So giving you some health pool to look at with a mob is probably better off. And it surprised me that wolf was still chasing after me. Don't quite feel up to fighting something that can fight back just yet. But yeah, got some basic resources, and now we're going to try to find ourselves a location to set up shop in. And if you noticed, there was a little hint at something off to our left as we decided to start slaughtering some Highland cattle. At least that's what I'm assuming that type is. And turns out this guy can actually fight back a bit. Now, one thing I appreciate in this that wasn't a super big fan of in Minecraft is that there's no hunger or thirst mechanic. Granted, I believe there's a mod that will already add that back if you actually want to use it, but I don't necessarily like that aspect of survival games. Don't mind it in Pal World all that much. I still haven't turned it off in it, but typically if you have health and stamina, I think those are good enough to manage. Like, stamina manages your movement stuff, and health is an adequate substitute for hunger. So, I don't really see the need to have hunger. Just double checking to make sure I've actually got the Spirit of the Frog. Some torches will be useful because at this point I have a little bit of gun shyness when it comes to being around in areas that are dark, which is also another thing that screws with me with Minecraft, because if you don't build things up fast enough when you first spawn in, then suddenly you find yourself being attacked by a bunch of creatures at night with very little you can do to help you. Yeah, now we have, by the way, the map only shows a certain radius around where your character is. It doesn't actually give away much else. And there's a good building. So we're going to go check this building out and see what we can make of it. Because we got a building there and we got a stone, just, I'll be honest with you, I don't really know what you would call that type of structure, just sitting over beside of it. And you saw some frame drops there. That's going to happen periodically with this. I do believe I also had to quit out and load back in for whatever reason. But yeah, this place seems like a good starting spot for me because there's a chest down in a little hidden sub area. And as you'll see here in just a second, there's actually a secondary room. So not that hard to actually set everything up to have a somewhat defensible position. Because I still don't know what's going to happen at night. Mild spoilers. Turns out night's not quite as dangerous if you're not out and just wandering around as it is in Minecraft. So you don't have to be able to go on full lockdown at nighttime. But, like in Minecraft, you really can just break things and pick them up and carry them along with you. So I'm not sure exactly how the dilapidated building mechanics work in this just yet. I noticed various parts of this building just didn't seem to have too much structure to it. I was looking around and it'll be a moment before I actually figure out that there is a whole other little section to that basement for this particular building. So we'll just jump forward a little bit, decide to come over and take a look at this place and try to mine some of it off and see exactly how easily that goes. And it's at the point where I'm mining this and sort of looking at that building that I realize, you know what? This is an ample source of stone. There's a mostly okay building over there. Why not just mine up some stone and actually try to convert that building into something useful rather than going around and hunting forever? See, I see the skeleton and some stuff wandering around over there, and that's when it starts reminding me probably need at least some sort of defensible shelter. I don't really see there being any other potentially harmful places nearby other than that. So we'll hop down here. We also have some water over there and a lot of just regular resources around. So we go down here to take us another look and see what's going on exactly. Like, how far does this dirt extend and what sort of condition is the building in overall? So looking here, and it still hasn't quite dawned on me just yet that the stones right there are different than the other stones around it. I'm just sort of going into cleanup mode. The idea was I was going to get all the dirt sections out and replace them with stone, and then just try to dress up the parts of the building that hadn't really been fully laid in as stone just yet. Haven't quite got the hang of mantling just yet either. But then that actually strikes me as odd, so I decided to take some of those out, and boom, hidden room. Which is actually a pretty cool little feature. That's one of the things that I can heavily appreciate about Minecraft in general. And Hytale as a sort of successor. The ability to find just randomly hidden passages and randomly hidden places is actually really nice. And while I'm taking this stuff out is when I start to realize, you know what, why don't I just do some minor modifications and actually turn this into my starting place. Because it's a pretty nice little room. So we'll pick this guy up, and then we'll start the process of actually turning it into a livable space. Which means, first thing, making a workbench. And I don't know why I expected that to take more time. I think I've played too much World of Warcraft where there is no such thing as a simple crafting time frame. So we drop a workbench, and I do remember that storage, as long as it's near a bench, if the bench can draw those items from it, it will, which I found to be interesting. And then I tested out just actually stacking those things. And keep in mind, I don't think I've made either one of those. I think I've just found them sitting around. Then I go ahead and drop the builder's workbench because that's what we're getting ready to do. Getting ready to build. So it seemed like the logical two to actually make, get down, and then drop our candle up there. So now we have the start to a decent shed. And I don't know how long it quite takes me to realize that for the workbench, there's actually tabs up top. And you have that for any of them, where you can click through and actually see multiple pages as to what all you can make. Made the bow, to be honest with you. I still haven't actually used it, so got me as far as how useful it actually is as a weapon, but I do like how much the torches actually light everything up. But yeah, so now we're going to start the process of cleaning the building up and just save a little bit of time. Let's just jump ahead a bit to where we actually start laying some stones down. So I've drilled the dirt that was out behind the benches and started laying this cobblestone down. Now, if you have OCD, you're going to be really pissed off at the initial appearance of my building because I just kind of work with what's there. There is one point where I finally actually discover a type of stone that I like. And yeah, I will probably at some point go back and make things a little bit more uniform. If you don't believe me on that, you can go over and check out the Pal World videos and take a look at the base that I'm currently using as my main base in it. As an example of, yes, I do actually have some concern about having decent aesthetics for my bases, but that is something that comes a little bit later. Right now it's more practicality. Get everything constructed and start to clean things up and get just a solid structure in place. Since it's starting to get dark, that actually kind of makes me freak out a little bit. So I just go ahead and construct some hardwood planks, and I noticed that, oh, you can do multiple styles. Now, I haven't thought yet to try the stone ones out or do any of that sort of stuff. I'm just looking around at the moment, look up, see it's dark, and my thought is, oh shit, I'm getting ready to be swamped by monsters. So let's just plug all these holes really quickly. And yeah, those do actually look really pretty. Like, I'm going to end up going with stone, but that's more just because I like the stone aesthetic a little bit more. But pop that in, pop a door in place, and then take a breath, because at least at this point I feel somewhat safe. And also, I don't know how easily these can catch on fire. I know in Pal World, if you put too many torches around wooden structures, those wooden structures can catch on fire. And if you don't have water pals going around, your building will burn down. So just to be sure that doesn't happen here, I go ahead and set the torches on the stone parts of it. So, and now comes the fun part of any construction project, quarrying stone. Now, there is one thing about this giant column of stone that sticks up out of the ground that I immediately became curious about. If you hack down the base of a tree, the whole tree collapses, and you can just run around and pick up stones and the plant fibers and all the other stuff that drops out. So my question was, what if I go around the whole perimeter of this giant chunk of stone and just basically carve the whole base layer out of it? Now, that takes a little bit of time. Fortunately, I'm going to need a massive amount of stone for what I want to do. So I have that time on hand. Now, I'm not going to make you watch as I cut out every single little layer of stone. So we're going to jump ahead until I'm getting the last couple blows in. So right here, we only have about 4 little sections left, and then I will have completely disconnected this stone from the ground, because you can see over there I actually had to dig out some of the dirt to get it to go back a little ways. Well, I thought it was 4 sections, but it's actually just a little bit more than that. But I have went around the entire rest of it. I do believe I'll make one little lap through it. And unfortunately, nothing happens. Now we just happen to have a magically floating stone pile. As far as I can tell, I don't think there's any blocks that are still linking to it. So I'm not 100% certain why it doesn't just collapse like the other stuff does, but it might have something to do with the way that they've actually done the cave physics. But now starts a long process of actually trying to get all of the floating stone broken out as well. In the meantime, I figure I'll go ahead and hop over here and actually start laying some stone down. You can see I've already actually dropped a few cobbles down. And this is the first point where it actually occurs to me, I could probably throw that stone into this workbench and make it look just a little bit prettier. And the aesthetic that I actually end up deciding to go with is the one that's called Temple of Light. And I'm not sure why, but I just like the way that stuff actually looks. I noticed the light temple window and decor and whatnot, and so since that's the way the decor and the doors and everything are going to look, I decided to actually go with that stone as well. Now, when I originally did this recording, I didn't think to actually get a surround video of what the place looked like when it was finished. Fortunately for you, I just decided to go ahead and hop in and actually record that after doing a few little initial bits of construction here. So we'll just start tearing everything down. And one of my thoughts with this is actually to eventually see if the roof would just collapse if I actually disconnected everything. I'll give you a hint. It doesn't. It actually stays floating as well. Now, again, that could just be an artifact of early access. It could be the way they actually intend for this to be. I don't know. I don't know how it is in Minecraft. And I guess one of the benefits Hytale has is, since I really don't know how all this stuff works in Minecraft, I don't know how it's actually going to work out in this. But I'll start laying the first couple light temple stones down, and I do like the way they look. So I don't mind going around and doing that, and I'm actually going to end out expanding the perimeter of the building just a little bit from what it originally was. So let's take a tour of the finished product. After about 2 hours worth of work, we end out with a furniture workbench, our shop workbench, some chests, the furnace, and the builder's workbench in the basement, as well as upgraded bed just a little bit. We come out, we've actually got a 2-wide set of stairs now, because I figured you never know, you always can deal with having just a little bit more room to come up and down the stairs. And up here we have the chef's furnace, the tanning rack, or well, chef's stove, the farmer workbench, the armorer's workbench, and the blacksmith anvil, as well as a little bit of storage around that area, some double doors, nice vaulted roof, and a few pretty windows and doors as well, and just my simple little cook pot down there on the floor, which I forget half the time that I could just use a chef's workbench instead, and don't do that. So walking around the outside over here was sort of the initial start of a little bit of a farm that I had going, but I have since seen a video that a guy did of a pumpkin pie farm, and whenever it comes time to actually make the farming area, I will probably dig that video up and actually link it into this one, because it was a really clever idea. So I'm going to steal his idea as far as my farm goes and make a multi-tiered, self-constructed farm. And I'm probably also going to go around the outside of the building and dig at least that first layer of walls out just a little bit to keep things like rabbits off the roofs, at least keep them from getting up there easily. So a couple ideas at the moment. I have a few ideas in mind of how to actually expand this structure out to add in a few other rooms and other spaces, and you can kind of ignore my quarry there for a moment. We're going to explore that in just a minute. But this is the building so far. I'm pretty satisfied with the way it's starting out. First thing before doing any upgrades is going to be just try to make all the stones uniform, but we'll see. I could just decide to do the expansion. Now, this is the last thing we're going to leave the video off with. We're going to start into our first mine. And the pattern that I've decided to do, instead of just constructing some ladders and doing a dig straight up and down, is we're actually just going to build a more or less terrace structure into the ground itself. So I'll do like a 3x3 set of blocks, then scoot them forward one and dig down roughly one whole layer. The problem is where this does auto mantle, got to kind of take that into account. You're not having to hop with everything like you do in Minecraft. So in this, I'm trying to make it wide enough that if I want to, I can just sprint up the stairs on the way back out. And I realize it's going to start getting dark, so I run in here and craft up a bunch of torches. At least I craft up a bunch of them once I harvest some fibers, which I don't know, I run around and slash some stuff, but the easiest way to really get fibers is just to cut some trees down. Although getting plant fiber is really not that hard of all the stuff that you can pick up, and I'm glad to see that it doesn't let you cut the berry bush that easily. But again, the easiest thing to do would have been just chop down a tree and then run around and collect all the trimmings from the tree having fallen down. But torches are really cheap to make. This is also giving me some sticks to throw into it. So we got enough to make a decent number of torches at this point, especially since they actually give you multiples per craft, which is one thing I didn't notice before I went up to harvest them, where I would have probably grabbed fewer. So you get 4 torches per craft. Gonna do it 10 times, which ends up being about 40 torches. So now we have plenty to take with us down into a mine, and we can actually start the dig. But that's where we're going to leave this episode off, is starting down into our mines. So the goals for the next time around will be to mine down enough to dig up enough ore to actually make us an initial set of armor. And then once we get that initial set of armor, we'll actually start trying to work our way to what would be considered Area 2, which I'm not sure what it's called yet. Because from what I understand, while you can find other ores in each area, as you go up in difficulty for those areas, the new ores become a lot more common. So instead of wasting our time just trying to find those rare ores here, we're going to find some more. So remember, in the meantime, if I can beat it, so can you.